Widely known as one of, if not the best horror games of all time, Silent Hill 2 has people still tooting its horn to this day. There's only one problem here. I was still pooping my pants, wearing diapers, and saying goo goo gaga when this John came out. So after 23 years, I'm finally gonna play and talk about Silent Hill. If you type in Silent Hill 2 onto YouTube right now, you'll get loads of videos calling it the best horror game of all time. When you look up best games of all time, Silent Hill 2 is almost always on that list. So going into the game, it had some pretty high expectations. For my playthrough, I played it on the Enhanced Edition for PC, because the Silent Hill collection is apparently some hot dog ass. What even made me interested in playing such a game like Silent Hill 2? Okay, sure, the remake's got a little bit to do with it, but there's always been something about Silent Hill I found cool. It was probably the fog, let's be honest. That damned fog. Prior to playing 2, I did play like 60% of Silent Hill 1, but I lost a save and my ass does not feel like replaying that whole thing. It does not hold up as well as this one. Obviously, with Silent Hill 2 being released in 2001, it's a pretty mechanically out-of-date game. I mean, it still uses tank controls for feet's sake. Thankfully, I actually like tank controls, so this game's barrier to entry is pretty low for me. I played Resident Evil HD, which is why I'm so fast in these clips.
I'm fast as fuck, boy!
Even though they can be frustrating, I think tank controls paired with limiting camera angles can make a game significantly more intense and scary, which for the most part, I think it does in this game. The only problem is when you're trying to shoot stuff that are above you. This game starts in a shabby roadside pooper as our main man, James, looks as though he's taking a bit of a trip to Kensington and going off the fent. He's touching the bugs under his skin in the mirror. Really though, he's just touching his face almost to see if it's real, if he's in a dream of some kind. The second line in this game starts us off with a bang, which has been etched into my mind ever since I heard it.
In my restless dreams, I see that town. Silent Hill.
This line paired with the hypnotic music playing in the background as James stares off into a PNG of a lake puts me in right away. James goes on a bit of a thinking monologue, which tells us why he's here. Because he got a letter from his wife Mary, but supposedly she died 3 years ago. Very interesting. The thing is, at this point, we don't know James is a bit of an information withholder. Arguably, a bit of a fibber, if you will. Again, we'll get to that later. We then proceed to experience the average male's journey, getting home from the bar, as James kind of just wanders through the woods hoping to get him to Silent Hill. After a bit of wandering, James finds a graveyard with some lass named Angela who's looking for her mother. After getting over the weird voice acting in this game,
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I didn't mean to scare you.
I turn my listening ears on as Angela warns James of Silent Hill, saying it's dangerous. James hits her back with the hardest line of the game.
I guess I really don't care if it's dangerous or not. I'm going to town either way.
Besides being a total anchor arm statement, it also gives us some insight into his mental state, that he would knowingly go into an already weird-looking town, knowing it's dangerous and not giving a hoot. He then does a bit of an ambient run, only to find a tunnel with a bizarre humanoid looking monster. As this bizarre straitjacket monster farts on you, James proceeds to bonk the monster, also known as a lying figure. Yes, I looked it up. On the head a few times, hopefully killing it. As James exits the tunnel, what sounds like Mary is heard on a portable radio we find. Then we as James decide to continue into this mysterious town. Once I get there, I do a bit of wandering. And despite this game being made in 2001, its map is pretty big. It does this by using the fog to cover up loading and decrease the render distance. I literally only know that because Transit and Black Ops 2 did a similar thing. And the way it does it is very well. Completely seamless. Sure, you can't go into a lot of buildings, but it's a 2001 game. What do you really expect? Oftentimes, this game also feels like Resident Evil-y in terms of it giving you a map of an area and saying you can go look around or you can just go find what you need to get through the game. Oftentimes, though, not as rewarding as you'd hope. After doing a bit more running through these streets with my chainsaw, I end up at an eerie apartment building. Going inside, I realize I don't live here, but I need to see if I can acquire some health drink. Before going back out into the hot-boxed air of Silent Hill, I make my way on my health drink journey. I stumble upon a key just on the other side of this. Oh, sorry. I'm being interrupted by the most annoying character in this game, Lara. What's interesting about Lara is she's not written like a normal child in a video game or movie. Often children seem like they're written as a burden or competent and helpful. But what's interesting about Laura is she's neither of those things. She's just a dickhead. Interestingly, though, a bit of a jump ahead here, but we find out Laura does not see any of the monsters in Silent Hill like James or other characters do, possibly hinting at the town only attracting damaged people. After my interaction with James' #1 hater, I do a bit more searching for health drink, and this happens. I finally meet the poster boy for Silent Hill, Pyramid Head. James catches a first-class ticket to the Diddy party as Pyramid Head practices for the freak-off with some mannequins in the kitchen. Disturbed, James decides to shoot at Pyramid Head while he practices for his freak session with a pistol he found in a shopping cart. Somehow this works and Pyramid Head lumbers off. As for my first interaction with Pyramid Head, what seems like almost a mythical-like gaming character at this point, I can say he's definitely got at least 500 bottles of baby oil on him. Taking a step out of the closet and drying off my sodden trousers, I continue my trek around the apartment. Eventually, I make my way to the courtyard, committing more aggravated assault on some fart-spraying goons, where I enter a different part of the apartment building. Here I find a chubby fellow named Eddie. While admiring his plumber's crack, Eddie tells James that he didn't kill the guy in the apartment, which is a bit suspicious, considering nobody blamed Eddie for that. At this point in the game, truly I wasn't thinking that much of Eddie. I thought his voice acting for throwing up was getting a little too real, and that maybe the monsters wouldn't respect him if he walked around with a plumber's crack out. But besides that, I didn't give Eddie that much thought, which it sounds like the game wanted me to think. James and Eddie do a bit of shit shooting. Then we say goodbye to Eddie, and to be careful as I'm on my jolly way. Doing a bit more exploring and puzzles, I make my way to the other end of this side of the apartment complex. I do this by going through what seems like a structurally unsound doorway at the end of a hall that leads to a window of an apartment. It doesn't seem like Silent Hill really affects the buildings, so did they just build it like that? They got Freak Bob for construction workers there. Despite a perplexing and probably not up to code design decision, I make my way to another end of the other end of the apartment, to where I find Angela pondering the old kitchen knife. James does his best to de-tweak Angela, only to mildly succeed, as she almost stabs James before running off back into ye old town. What's interesting about this is how it adds more context to Angela already. In only her second scene, we learn a lot more about her. Sure, we know she was looking for her mom when she came here, but we also know things at home might not be the best, and that kitchen knife may have been used before. I then make my way out of the apartment building after Pyramid Head attempts to shake me down for my lunch money in a flooded stairway. I have a newly acquired goal to go to the pier/park area of Silent Hill to look for Mary. On my way, I run into the Queen of Brat, Lara, who tells me she not only knows Mary, but she has a letter from her. And guess what? I'm not getting that, because right when James wants to see the letter, she promptly scurries off like the rat that she is. Once getting to the park, we meet someone who looks oddly a lot like Mary, but a bit slooty. She claims her name is Maria. James promptly shows Maria how off his gourd he is, but for some reason, she still wants to go with him. I suppose it's better than going alone with a town full of monsters, but for all she knows, this guy could be just as crazy. In fact, he's kind of shown himself to be just as crazy. And from this point, I knew there was something up with Maria. I mean, if you look at the characters we've met so far, most of them were in relatively safe areas. Not to say there weren't monsters nearby, but a graveyard on the outskirts of town, an apartment with one way in, and Maria's just out here in the open, safe. Maria also helps remind James of his other special place with Mary, being the hotel. So I guess off we go to the hotel. Obviously, we can't just go right to the hotel, so we make a bit of a pit stop at a bowling alley, where the best conversation of the game is held.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
Somehow, my brother Eddie is found gobbling on a fresh pie in the middle of an abandoned town full of manifestation monsters. And despite how goofy it is, it's awesome. Oftentimes, games can get annoying with goofy stuff they add, especially in very heavy subject matters like this game handles, but somehow it works. Like, how weird is it that this guy is just eating what seems like a fresh pizza in the middle of a dilapidated bowling alley? Like, he really got broccoli on his pizza? Something tells me that wasn't Eddie's first choice. But really, if you do think about it, this town did spawn a freshly cooked pie just for my man. Does that mean the town should be called Pizza Hill? Silent Pizza?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Alright. While admiring that fresh pie, we also learned that Eddie was being chased by the cops before coming to Silent Hill. Something tells me there's more to that pie than meets the eye. And it's quite odd seeing as how the last time we saw him, he just randomly claimed he didn't kill some guy after not being accused. So we can already see each time we're meeting these people, we're getting little hints that tell us perhaps why they're here in Silent Hill with us. And maybe what does that mean for us, for James? Oh yeah. And Laura's here too. I tried to forget about that part. Of course she runs away again, because fuck it, why not? And James and Maria proceed to chase after her. We end up at the hospital, which looks about as good as a Philly 7-Eleven, though probably less dangerous. I spent the next 20 to 30 minutes jiggling every fent-laced handle in sight and dodging sexy nurses? I don't know. I enter a hospital room where Maria takes on a bit of a cough. Just totally not a coincidence at all. That's this random girl that looks like Maria is getting a bit sick. Yeah. So I then go on my merry way to put the hairiest fishhook down a drain to acquire an elevator key. I find Laura on the first floor, conveniently just after leaving Maria. I've noticed at this point, nobody else has seen Maria except for me, proving that Laura is the true villain of Silent Hill. She proceeds to lock my ass in a room with some hanging lips. Of course, after letting the lips suckle on me for a little bit, I said enough is enough and put him down. The Hawk Tuah James just received has proven too much for him, so he faints, waking up in the other world. When I played the original Silent Hill, I did experience a bit of the other world, and to be honest, even while playing this game and the first game, I actually think regular Silent Hill is more scary. There's something more terrifying about everything seeming normal, but with just that little bit of uncanny valley to get under your skin. The other world, to me, besides being cleaner than Kensington, sometimes feels like the devs put it in because they felt like people maybe wouldn't get as scared if they didn't have like a scary dimension. That's not to say that the other world is bad or lame. I just personally think having those supernatural and uncanny valley things in a more realistic setting, like the regular town of Silent Hill, is more impactful and unsettling than just rust everywhere and it's dark. But making my way past the fent-leaning nurses, I meet Maria again, randomly walking around this hotel. Again, a bit perplexing why she would do that. If she was really scared, why not just stay where she was? Wait for James to come back. He did say he was coming back after all. We do some more yapping, some more puzzle solving. A disembodied game show host talks to us and asks us questions from the ceiling in the elevator. Normal things. After swiftly looking up those answers, we're able to make our way to the basement where Pyramid Head reappears. I disappear like a Scooby-Doo character, leaving Maria to face Zaddy. Unfortunately, I was too swift because Maria just barely misses the elevator where Pyramid Head promptly swings his giant knife into her. I do have to say I was not expecting that to happen, and in the moment, I did feel bad for James, despite knowing something's a little off with Maria. But I think there is something to be said, because James kind of walks it off again. I mean, to be fair, he didn't really know her, but she did look like Mary. There is some connection there. But shaking off the death of this most definitely real woman's murder, I make my way to the Silent Hill Historical Society.
I am once again asking for you to subscribe.
Over 99% of my viewers are not subscribed. If you've liked the video so far, feel free to subscribe. If not, understandable. Have a nice day. And probably the most walky of puzzles, and one desecrated grave later, I arrive at the Historical Society. I take in the not particularly impressive building, and the odd picture of Pyramid Head in the Historical Society. Looking at this then and now, did he make that up? Was the town made there? I mean, it can spawn a pizza. I feel like this is what a lot of people latch on to when they're making like another Silent Hill project, and Pyramid Head is in it. I don't think Pyramid Head is supposed to be anyone other than someone for James, but, you know, in my short scurry around the building, I discover a large square hole, and doing the sensible thing, I jump into it. Of course, one hole is not nearly enough, so I go down a few more holes, eventually ending up at what seems like the Silent Hill prison. Walking around here, I discover a courtyard with some nooses in the middle of it, and probably my favorite part of the prison and the scares this game has. As you walk around this courtyard, it's pitch black. You can barely see anything, but you can hear footsteps almost as if they're coming up from behind you. But no matter where you run around, there's nothing there. I suppose once you figure this out, it makes it a little bit less scary, but the idea that there could be something out there in the darkness and you just can't see it, I think that's pretty cool. There's also another part kind of similar to this, where you're going down a cell block and there's no enemies in there, but you can just hear something walking. Again, almost as if it's coming up behind you, or if it's in front of you. I think they did this by placing one of those stomping lip guys in an area you can't see, but still quite effective. Definitely not missing the rifle on my first playthrough, I make my way through the prison. To James and my surprise, I find Maria locked in a cell, alive. She has no memory of being killed, and essentially reveals to us that she may not necessarily be real. Or maybe she is, but only recently so. In the beginning of our conversation, she acts almost as if she is Mary. But then when James asks her, "Who are you?" she doesn't actually say that she's Maria. She says, "I am if you want me to be." Which to me is a great reveal and one of my favorite parts of the game. No wonder they put it in the remake trailer, because it shows this person you've been traveling with is just another part of Silent Hill. It gives an almost gross feeling to be around Maria, and again goes on that normal but also slightly uncanny valley feeling that makes this game so good. You assume people like Maria, Eddie, and Angela are all real, fairly normal people, nothing to be scared of. Peeling back layers with each cutscene that these people are not necessarily friends. Maria's whole personhood is seemingly dedicated to James, almost as if the town made her that way. Maria, getting a bit freaky, tells James to fetch 999 more bottles of baby oil, and by this I mean get the key to get her out. Through some more impossibly structured hallways, we find Angela, who's being harassed by what seems like another lip monster, yet almost a walking bed at the same time. If we do a little looking up, this thing is called a daddy, which is not particularly surprising when you think about Angela's backstory. And it also reminds us that the monster designs are so good in how they're related to each character, it feels like, but also how it could fit to other characters. This disgusting bedridden freak could also be seen as Mary, how James saw her. After defeating the monster, we learn that Angela is in Silent Hill because she killed her father. because of the depraved things he would do to her. And I can't say I blame her, but what's interesting is how this game shows us that she kind of feels guilty about it because her mom made her feel that she deserved what happened to her, but also because it's just her father. It gives us another hint to the people brought here are not necessarily bad people. They may have done bad things, but they feel guilt for what they've done and almost seek a penance for it. Angela leaves us and we continue on our way through the impossible hallways, ending up on the other side of the jail cell. Inside, Maria is still there, but you're darn tootin', she's dead this time. But not from Pyramid Head and his giant knife, but from what seems like some kind of disease that has put hives and blisters on her face. Leaving the two-time, and after some more traveling, we end up in old Gravy Train Meat Boat's meat locker. And would you believe it, John Pizza is here. Eddie has officially gone mega tweaker mode. He admits not only did he murder some poor pup, but also shot the owner in the leg. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, can you really trust a guy who uses Silent Hill's powers for pizza? No, but it does continue this idea that these people may not have wanted to do it, but felt like they were pushed to do something horrible. I mean, Eddie is a tale as old as time, constantly bullied for the way he looks and his weight, only to end up doing something so despicable and depraved that he ends up becoming a villain. The best boss fight in the game commences. Eddie is swiftly made to look like a piece of Swiss cheese, where I leave him lying on the floor with the other meat. Sort of understandably at this point, James, not honestly all that shaken up, gets into a boat and rows his way to the hotel where a supposed videotape that him and Mary made, and that I definitely didn't leave out earlier in this video, is at. And this part is interesting to me because this game, not very tough to run on modern hardware, but I imagine it was a bit stressful on the old PS2s because goddamn put all their computing power into rendering out this lake. On my first playthrough, I lost the little light in the distance, and my ass was rowing for like 10 minutes looking for the land. This game may not have good rendering tech, but hell, do they have some massive lake tech. 50 more minutes of rowing later, I arrive at the hotel. Laura is there, and for once, not being a dickhead, she gives me the letter that Mary wrote to her. In it, it says that Mary and Laura did actually know each other, and it was less than a year ago. And this is also what makes the game so good. Throughout, we kind of believe James and what he's telling us, and telling himself, but despite this, we keep finding out that James may be a bit of a fibber. And so with the knowledge that James may be his own biggest gaslighter, we go on our way to find the tape. One nudist elevator later, we arrive in the room with the tape. Yeah, James killed Mary. This whole thing has been to discover something James has already known but wanted to forget. This whole story that we've been fed from James is hogwash. Mary didn't die 3 years ago. She was killed a few days ago, maybe. James considers it 3 years ago because that's when she got sick with her disease. The way these reveals pan out in the game are just so good. I remember watching this cutscene and thinking, dude, that's some crazy shit. Because the whole game, you're kind of wondering, what guilt does James have? Why is he here? But what's also great about this reveal is it's not over at this cutscene. At this point, in an instant, the man you thought was the tortured hero of this story turns into almost a villain. A person that wanted to kill and did kill his own sick wife. Again, showing us that Silent Hill doesn't attract just anybody. It attracts people who almost feel like they deserve to be there. With this knowledge regained, James is taken to what is almost likely the real version of this hotel. It's dank and drab, like my Philly apartment the third time it got flooded. Going through my Philly apartment, we meet Angela for the last time. Except this time, she's in a stairway that's covered in fire. She mentions to us that this is how things always look for her. Again, adding more context to that knife. We did see her looking at it in an almost longing way in the mirror the second time we saw her, but this time it just straight up confirms that she was planning on using that for herself. The reason she sees fire all the time is to imply that life is a living hell to her, which to me, out of all of the characters in this, I see Angela as probably the most tragic. And that's pretty hard, because we didn't even get to Mary yet. Despite a bad character model, she is actually like 19, I think. Angela's subject matter is certainly the most heavy. I'm not going to sit here and make jokes about it, because there's nothing funny about it. To have a person younger than myself in such a state that this is how she would see the world is utterly awful. Angela remarks on the knife James took from her, asking if he's going to use it on himself. James denies this, and Angela walks away into the flame. James, having already dealt with so much in such a little time, makes his way down some more wacky hallways, unfazed. A square of 9 red save papers are in front of 2 large doors. We enter, and inside there are 2 pyramid heads this time. And from what we can gather, or at least I could gather, the first one represents Mary, and the second one representing Eddie. The guilt he has for killing them both turned into hunky pyramid men. A few good laps around the room, and I beat both pyramid heads. I say beat, but they're defeated by their own pegging. Possibly some more insight on James's own subconscious desires. Making my way up some janky stairs, I arrive at the end of the game finally. At the top, what seems like Mary leaning over the edge is near a bed. In reality, it's Maria pretending to be Mary. James rejects her to where Maria goes full Tweak Bob, attempting to kill us by queefing moths from the ceiling. What should have been originally a 4-minute boss fight ended up being a few more laps around the track because I may have not known where to get the rifle on the first playthrough. I finally get Maria down from the tweak ceiling to where I brutally execute her. The game is finally over, and this long-ass explanation is over. Except the game has one more card up its theoretical sleeve. In the ending I got, and the ending I prefer, Mary and James talk to each other as Mary is dying. In this we learn Mary did want to die, but she also didn't. She was scared and angry at the whole thing. The idea of death growing exponentially closer with each day as she gets weaker and weaker. Something I truly cannot imagine, but also adds some more context to that videotape that we saw. James tells her that he grew to hate her, feeling like his life has ended ever since she had gotten sick. That's why he says she died 3 years ago. For the last time of the game, turning our understanding of James around once again. The reason James killed her is the problem. Mary was tired, she was sick, and although she didn't want to die, and whoever does, she wanted it to end. She wanted the pain to stop. And in that way, you could see it as a euthanasia. But the reason James did it was because he was tired of her. He hated her. But he also didn't. She was his wife. And the toll a prolonged disease can take on not just the person who's sick, but the relationship that they're in adds so much complexity to how you feel about what James did, that it elevates this game to the status that it's at. Despite Maria understanding James' hatred, she hands him a letter and tells him to live his life as her final wish. It then fades into the graveyard we originally met Angela in, as Mary's letter is read. Possibly one of the most crushing letters I've ever heard. In it, Mary tells James how sorry she is for what happened, that her dying has stopped his life, that she feels guilt for what she's put James through, ending it off telling James to live for himself and that what he did was enough. She was happy and she loved him. We then see Laura running through the graveyard out of Silent Hill. Close behind her is James. And there the game ends. I know that was a lot of yapping to get through this game, but I think it's worth going through the whole game to encapsulate where we started, what we found out, and where we ended up. If it isn't clear, I left out a ton of stuff in this game, but tried to keep the information that I did include important. When I originally loaded up this game, I was unsure of whether it would meet the incredible standards set by so many people. I tend to be a bit of a stingy critic with media, and sometimes I set myself up for failure with that. Somehow, though, this game, despite its often goofy voice acting, jank controls and dated graphics, all of that fades away when you play it, or even if you just watch it. This game exceeded my expectations. Maybe I'm a bit biased here because I'm often lucky or just Captain Convenience because I often experience media at appropriate times in my life. Not to get all woey on everyone, but I had a pet that I deeply loved go through a form of cancer at the same time I played this, not even knowing its substance. And even though it's not the same, and not nearly as long as James or others, I felt that guilty feeling of wishing things would just continue on. Not only could I move past this horrible time in my life, but also that the suffering would end for the one condemned to die. Eventually, it does, and despite being over, you can't help but feel guilty at those thoughts. So because of this, James's story deeply resonated with me then as it does now. If you've ever watched any of my other videos, you often know I love the characters more than the main story or the message. I think James is one of the most well-written horror protagonists ever. His guilt and shame is so accurately put to the screen and makes it impossible to not feel something. The letter that Mary reads at the very end is so utterly heartbreaking and human. You feel as though you get an understanding of the utter fear and sadness she went through in those 3 years. I love the oppressive fog of Silent Hill. Walking through it is mesmerizing even with the dated graphics. Its use of score or lack thereof reminded me of The Shining and how often the music is just a bunch of cling-clangs, which is just another large piece in what makes this game so good. Oftentimes you'll be walking and it'll just be dead silent except for James's footsteps. Other times the music lulls you into an almost dream-like stupor. As someone who loves soundtracks, this is probably going to be my top for 2024. I'm going to have another wacky-ass Spotify Wrapped. The monster designs are disgusting body horror that seems almost human enough to give you that uncanny valley feeling. But what makes this game stand the test of time is its subject matter and how it deals with it. Something I learned in film school was how often people use death or other types of life tragedies as almost crutches to get people invested. It feels like they put them in to make something feel adult without having earned it. I noticed this a lot in student films when I was in school, and it didn't feel right a lot of the time. The way this game depicts the subject matter and how it connects with the characters feels as if the people writing it knew exactly how it felt to have those things happen to them. And when you do that, it can't help but keep you invested and get you invested. Its exploration of so many serious topics in a way that feels accurate and respectful to those things is what keeps Silent Hill 2 a classic. When I originally loaded up this game, I doubted it would meet those lofty expectations, and I gotta say, Silent Hill is the best horror game ever made.